Hi everyone, welcome to Openings number 3. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most complicated variations in all of chess. It's originated in the first half of the 20th century, but it's still played today. There are grandmasters like Alexei Shirov and Daniel Friedman that still play this regularly at the top level, so quite a interesting and still playable variation. So if you're interested in the Slav and the semi-Slav in general, I have a Chess Basics. Chess Basics number 43 is an introduction to the Slav and semi-Slav. I'll include a pointer to it. To illustrate this particular variation, I'm going to show you a game from 1931. It was played in Budapest at the Zoltán Save Memorial between Meeklo Szigeti and Joseph Meeklo. And unfortunately, I don't have a pointer to this game that I can give you. It wasn't on chessgames.com. I found it in ChessBase. I did a search for the earliest position, for the earliest game in their database where the position of the Botvinnik variation showed up. And it was a pretty interesting game, so it teaches some key points about this variation, so I thought I would include it. So let's just step through the opening moves quickly. Like I said, check out the Chess Basics video if you're interested in the opening. And there's different opening moves orders that you can get to. I mean, this looks like it's going to be a Nimzo Indian, but in fact, it's going to be something different after d5 and knight f3. And this is the position where you can start as black. You can start to play for the Botvinnik system. In the semi-Slav. Don't confuse this with the Botvinnik system in the English, which is a system I play a lot. That's a kind of a closed system where things are blocked up. No, this system is an open system, and it starts off with the move d takes c4. I mean, that's how you get into it. I guess it's not technically the Botvinnik variation until a couple moves later, but that's how it starts off. So there's a point where you have several choices as black. I just want to point out, first of all, black has played the semi-Slav because he has that pawn triangle. That's what makes this possible. And white has played this bishop development, which is not always played against the Slav. Sometimes, the way I play it, I often will push this d-pawn forward instead of bringing the bishop out. So those are the key points that allow you to play the Botvinnik variation as black. You have to play the pawn triangle, and you have to your opponent has to play the bishop g5 line. Okay, so in this position, black has several choices, and I talk about some of these in my Chess Basics video. One of them is knight bd7, followed by queen to a5, the Cambridge Springs variation, setting up some interesting tactics. Another, and actually the most popular line here, is to just play h6, and if white takes, take back, is known as the Moscow variation, quite playable for black too. Or if white retreats that bishop, then this is known as the anti-Moscow variation, very creative naming, and it can lead to a similar line as the Botvinnik system after pawn takes pawn. So it is kind of similar. But anyway, we're going to just be looking at the Botvinnik variation, which starts with d takes c4 right in this position, and this was played in the game. And the idea here is to follow up with b5, and now we're truly in the Botvinnik variation. This is apparently a greedy move. Black has got an extra pawn here and defended it, and he's not going to give it back so easily. But what about this attack on the knight here? Isn't that trouble? Well, that's first of all, let's back up one move. If you play something other than b5, like bishop to e7, then bishop takes pawn, the material is even, and you've lost time with all those pawn moves. As black, you've lost time. So white is ahead in development and has a big center, and this is just a winning position for white. I mean, with good play, it's not there's no tactical win here. It's just a strong player would be able to win this position most of the time. So the only logical move here, really, and the only move you see at the top levels in this position is to play b5. Once you've decided to take, this is pretty much the line you're going down. And white is not going to back down either. He's threatening to pin that, attack the pinned knight, and he's going to do it. So black counterattacks. The bishop retreats, and black blocks the pin. So at this point, it's white that has to choose whether to back down or keep fighting. And if white backs down, then the knight can come here, and black is just a pawn up and has pretty much consolidated. So the move here, which was played in this game and it's also played in by Botvinnik, was to take that pawn. And now there's two different moves here. The way Botvinnik played this, and we'll see that in the next game, is he took this pawn, and the way what's his name, Meeklo Szigeti played was to oh no, it wasn't. He wasn't the one who was playing black. It was Joseph Meeklo was playing black. He moved the knight. It's an interesting attempt to save the knight and force white to move this knight back, but it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that white can take here. And this was played in the game. This is the best response. And you can see that this knight is attacking the queen. It's attacking the rook. So there's a fork. Also, the bishop is attacking the queen. So the queen is attacked twice and has to move. The queen could take the bishop. The bishop is just hanging, but then the knight gets to take the rook. And, you know, this might be okay. This position might be okay if black could manage to trap that knight, but it turns out there's just no way to catch it. So this is a good position for black. In this position, Szigeti-Michlo played the move knight takes c3 here, which is pretty reasonable, but the best move according to the chess engine was bishop to b4. So I just wanted to show you how even with best play, white still comes out ahead. Because it does look a little dubious with that knight in the corner. So anyway, this knight is attacked. It should be defended. And then c5, busting up the center. D takes c5. And bishop takes knight. It's important to get rid of that knight so the queen can come over. It's part of the plan. Pawn takes. And now the queen e4 check. So it starts to look a little bit scary, especially after the knight hops in here. We have, you know, the black pieces swarming, but there's only two of them. The whole queen side is not yet developed, and white is material up if white can consolidate somehow. So white can go ahead and just kick the queen. Queen can step forward. Now you have to play the move queen d2, which is actually the only move. If you're to do something different, for example, say king here to protect this pawn, the knight can take the bishop. And now there's a problem here. If the queen takes the knight, then the queen will take this rook, or if the king can't take the knight. So that's just a lost bishop, and this is a winning position for black. So you have to play queen d2. It's a pretty natural move, though. You want to get that queen out of your camp anyway, and then black can recoup some material with this move here, knight d3 check. You can't take the knight. Bishop is pinned, so the king moves. And then the knight could grab the rook, but actually it's better to grab this one, apparently. Knight here with check, king runs, knight takes, and, oh, queen here first. Queen takes, then knight takes. This is just a computer-generated variation, so I just wanted to show you. At the end, we have even material in terms of the pieces. One rook, one knight, one bishop. But black's pieces are completely undeveloped, and white has two extra pawns. So this is actually pretty easy. Another key point is that the king can't step here and then come in to attack the knight. If the king wants to attack the knight, it has to go here, and then the knight can come out with a check. So the knight is not getting trapped. So that's why bishop b4, even the best play, is not going to accomplish what you want. Okay, so let's go back a few moves just in case you've lost track of where we were, and then we'll go on with the game. So this was after after taking, defending the pawn, playing h6. Oops, we get g5, the knight takes, and then instead of taking, which we'll see in the next game, we had knight here, and then we had this key move, knight takes f7 with the fork, and the double attack, queen takes here, rook takes here, and now in this game, Szigeti-Michlo continued with knight takes knight, which is not quite as good, but it's a reasonable move. Then knight d7, just developing the pieces. And now the knight can come to g6. Now you might think this is a little risky because the queen here can go here with check, but there's a really clever defense. That's why I wanted to show the whole game here. It's got a lot of really cute tactics. Do you see the way that white saves his knight here? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The bishop goes to e2, and now if the queen takes the knight, the bishop can go here, skewering the queen and king. So that knight is indirectly defended. Black plays bishop a3 here, and white goes with castling. So white is up the exchange and has a couple of extra pawns, and it has a second, even has a safer king. So this is really just completely winning. I think we'll just go through the rest of the game kind of quickly. Let's see, bishop b7 was played, bishop f3, kicking that queen, queen to f5, don't want to get taken by the knight, queen e2, oops, queen e2, keeping this thread alive. The queen can't leave off at the battery. It's got to keep this thread alive so that this queen taking the knight is still ruled out. Then castles queenside, and now at this point the knight really is in danger because there's no longer a pin. So bishop e4, defending the knight directly. Queen goes to f7, f4, pushing forward, c5. Opening up this diagonal, we get a check, an exchange with check, and queen e4 check to defend the knight again. King b6, rook a b1. This one, yeah. Looking at the king, a6, defending. f5, pushing forward in the center. C takes d4 now, messing up the other side of the center. C takes d4, queen h7, f takes e6, queen still defends the knight, knight to f8, trying to take advantage of this pinned knight. So it looks a little scary, but the queen ignores all this and just goes to h4. And now if knight takes knight, then queen takes rook. So that's not happening. So we have rook takes d4. It's interesting tactic here. Black has spotted an idea, maybe inspired by some of white's play. If you take, which actually was played, then you get skewered. But that is a rook and a bishop for the queen. And after you take here, you can also take this knight. And so it's two rooks and a knight versus the queen. Oh, he didn't take there. He took with the knight. Knight takes f8. Yeah, leaving the knight hanging would be a mistake, probably. Okay, and then queen to e7, attacking the pawn, trying to stop it. The rook comes in. Queen to e8. Rook f to b1, defending this rook so the pawn can come forward. c3, this pawn starts to come forward. e7, c2, to distract this rook, I suppose. Knight to g6. Queen takes. f7, yeah, taking the rook, because this rook leaves, then this pawn can queen with check. But white says, that's fine, go ahead and do that. And then this pawn queens. and the rook can just drop back. And there's one follow-up check. So, white obviously had to calculate all of this. And then queen to d3 was played, hitting the rook, and then the rook went to c1 with check. So saving the rook. Also notice that if we back up a move, black was not able to take that pawn. It's defended by the knight, and this pawn is going to queen. So when queen d3 was played, you just have to save this rook with a tempo, and black resigns. His pieces are safe. The king has to move, and then this pawn will queen the next move, and so we'll be up 2 pieces. So fun game. I hope you guys like that one. And let's take a look at how Botvinnik played this setup. The next game I wanted to look at, and the last one for this video, is the game Denker Botvinnik from 1945. And this is the game that really put this variation on the map and gave it the name, the Botvinnik system in the semi-Slav. So this was a radio match played in 1945 between the USA and the USSR, and Arnold Denker was a strong American grandmaster at the time. So Denker started off. Denker has the white pieces and Botvinnik the black pieces, and we get pretty much a normal opening, a standard way of getting into the semi-Slav. Botvinnik just goes directly for the pawn triangle, and after knight f6, setting up the pawn triangle first and then bringing the knight out. White can't develop the bishop right away, but waits until the knight is there and then brings the bishop out. And so this gives Botvinnik the chance to play the Botvinnik system. So I don't know if this position was all that well known. It had been shown up in a few other games. So Denker may have known that Botvinnik wanted to play this and was willing to go into it, or it may have been a surprise to him, but he plays all the normal moves. e4, threatening to take, b5 defending, e5, threatening the pinned knight. I guess all these moves are really very natural, so you would, even if seeing this the first time, you would probably find these moves. h6, kicking the bishop, and of course you don't want to just take, and that doesn't leave you with any advantage. So you back off and maintain the pin and force black to play g5 to save the knight. Knight takes, and now in the previous game we saw the move knight to d5, trying to save the knight, and we saw that didn't really work out well for black after knight takes f7. So Botvinnik plays this by taking the knight, and after the bishop takes back, what you can notice about this point is that this position is that even though white has sacrificed a piece, but this piece is both pinned and attacked, so there's no saving it. White is going to get his piece back. Botvinnik just played knight bd7. This is all part of the plan. He takes f6, and actually at this point, it is white is the one that's one pawn up, because black grabbed a pawn over here, white grabbed 2 pawns over here, gave up a piece, and then got the piece back. Now this pawn is hanging, and I think there are lines where black just takes that pawn. So it's pretty even materially, but there's a difference in the weakness of the respective king positions. There's these open lines for attacking white's king. Black is, in the meantime, going to castle queenside, and though this position is kind of open, it's actually fairly strong. So that's what black is going for. But if you look at this with a chess engine computer, it will give white an advantage. So bishop e7, but not easy to play. Bishop e2, and Garry Kasparov commented on this game in the ChessBase version of the game. He wrote, writing 51 years later, this move is automatic, not bishop e2, but g3. g3 is the move that everybody knows to play now, but at the time, it was not known how to play this. In fact, the move g3 doesn't show up in the database until 4 years later in 1949 there was a Latvian team training match between Pasman and Tal, and Pasman played this against Tal and actually won. And then the next time it shows up was in the game Semi-Slav Botvinnik 1954 from their World Championship match. And so that's when the move really got popularized. That's also part of why this is called the Botvinnik system. He wasn't just playing it to surprise Americans, but he was playing it when he was fighting for the World Championship too. So we're going to come back in the next video. I'm not going to have time in this video, but in the next video we'll look at a game where G3 was played. But for this video we're going to go with the move that Denker played, which was Bishop E2. And this is not a losing move. In fact, it's white is still about even here, according to chess engines. And I want to say, given that Denker hadn't ever seen this position before, this move G3 looks a bit suspicious, right? It opens up the diagonal for the bishop. He just has to push this pawn forward to get a free attack on that rook. So we'll see how that gets dealt with. The point I wanted to make is that Denker, seeing this move for the first time, no benefit of theory or experience, played the pretty solid move Bishop E2 and still is doing okay here. So anyway, black continues with Queen B6, white castles, and black castles. And now Kasparov writes, both kings have castled, but white's king will feel the pressure, especially after C5. Pushing that pawn is going to open up this diagonal. Also, if there's an exchange here, it will bring this bishop out. And so it's is a pretty good position for black if he can get both rooks pointing at white's king and both bishops pointing at white's king side, and the rook is already pointing there on this file, and it could also shift to the G file. But this position is still even. Let's see. The move that was played here, though, was A4. Like I said, it looks like black's king position is a little open, and but it's just not quite as weak as it looks. I mean, so A4 is a pretty natural move, trying to create weaknesses around the king. But as Gary Kasparov writes, A4 looks natural, opening up black's king side, but bishop F3 was needed to protect the crucial diagonal. So bishop F3 and opposing that bishop was the way it should have been played, and that would keep the game about even. After B4 and Botvinnik's reply, after A4 and Botvinnik's reply B4, kicking the knight, then black is better. So the knight hops to E4, and then C5, just pushing those pawns forward, opening up lines. And now this knight is in the line of fire of the bishop. It probably doesn't want to move out of the way, so Denker at first tries to defend it, puts the queen here. Now the queen falls back to C7, taking a look at the H-pawn, coordinating that way. So poking and prodding. I talked about this in my middle game series. Sometimes just shifting your pieces around and poking and prodding and looking for weaknesses can be a good way to induce a mistake in by your opponent. And this is one of those mistakes, knight to G3, to block the diagonal. And Kasparov's comment here is that this was the final mistake. Actually, after this, white is losing. If we back up, white could have played G3 here and tried to keep that knight on the diagonal like Gary is recommending. Maybe the bishop could come here, or yeah, it can't go there. It could take the pawn and fall back, I guess, to support it, but putting it here seems more natural to add an extra defender. But black is still better in this position. But after the game, after the move knight G3, which is played in the game, black pushes on with C takes D4. And what he's doing here is he's opening up more lines for his pieces. So he's already got this open, and he wants to put his bishop here and open up this diagonal too. So anyway, but this does leave a pawn hanging. Maybe it's not obvious that that's hanging at first because the queen is protecting that square, but the queen can't actually take because the rook skewer would win the queen. So that bishop is protected. It's so it was a free pawn. It's okay to take. So the queen just shifts to c6, shifting to another diagonal, probing another weakness. So f3, stop the mate. And now d3, like I said, just opening up this diagonal. Also, maybe creating some threats with the idea of pushing that pawn yet. But Denker plays queen to c1. That defends the bishop, puts the queen opposite opposite Botvinnik's queen, and maybe after a move like bishop here would force some kind of queen trade, and that would relieve the pressure. And this pawn itself is not going to be queening. It's stopped by the bishop, and it's also stopped by the rook. So interesting move. Now bishop to c5. Like I said, taking advantage of that other diagonal. So we have both diagonals in operation here, and the king stepped aside. This leads to a pretty quick demise. A slightly better way to defend was bishop e3, but this actually loses too. It's kind of tricky, but watch this. After bishop e3, pawn to d2, interrupting the communication between the queen and the bishop. So the queen has to take to keep the bishop defended. And then knight e5, hitting the queen. Queen can hop over to f2, defending the bishop. There's an exchange. And then the knight can take here. And that was pretty straightforward, and black is just a piece up. Now if we pause to count material, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns to 4 pawns. So black has given up 2 pawns, but has won an entire bishop. And the queen is hanging here. Actually, queen can take over here, and it might look a little menacing at first, but it just turns out that king is perfectly safe. There's just no way to exploit it. I mean, I would still keep on playing if I had this position. There's ideas here. Put a rook here, you know, try and take advantage of the lineup of pieces on the c-file. But anyway, the computer tells us that this position is actually just lost. Extra piece will tell out, I guess. So that was with best play. Anyway, what Denker played was king to h1. The queen went to d6, shifting to another diagonal again. Also, you know, getting out of that lineup against the king. Queen to f4, trying to provoke a queen trade. And now we can see one of the problems here. We see a really nice move from Botvinnik. Rook takes h2. Taking advantage of the position of white's king. Can't run this way. He's got to take that rook. It's a sacrifice that can't be denied. And now we can also see that this position of the queen here was pinning that rook to the g3 square, which keeps the king in a box over here. Now rook to h8 check was played. Queen goes to h4 to defend. After all, he sacrificed a whole rook, so white could afford to give up the queen. It's just 2 rooks for the queen, but then queen comes to f4, and it's all over. The queen is attacking this bishop and attacking this bishop, and there's no way to save them both, and the king's position is all exposed as well. So Denker resigned at this point. So that's it for this video. This game, as I said, is the one that put the Botvinnik system on the map in a pretty pretty good example of what black can do in this system. In the next video, we'll look at a couple of games, one with that move g3, to see how white can best handle this kind of aggression. And then we'll also look at a modern game in the Botvinnik system. Because as I said in the introduction here, it's a system that is still played by grandmasters today. So I'll see you then. Bye.